Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk more about the Gray Army and a little bit about the Dumpy family, but before we get into that, I have a special feature for this episode, and that's the baby Cope's gray tree frog. This little guy has continued to live his life inside this little plastic bin because he hasn't really grown much. But today, it's finally time to upgrade him from a home in a little plastic bin to at least a slightly larger critter keeper. The hope is that it'll increase the size and activity for this baby Cope's. But before we get into talking about the upgrade for this baby Cope's gray tree frog, I wanted to add an additional scene that wasn't added in to the last episode. This is of the Gray Army. Meredith that you see first, hunting the dubia roach. And then Dante, who made a rare appearance on the ground, who also catches a dubia roach. It was just a really cool clip that wasn't added in, and I thought it was definitely good enough to be added. So here we are a couple weeks later, and finally it's gonna air. It's just a really unique thing for me because I don't feed my animals dubia roaches very often. Like I said, it was the very first time. So including them in and just watching the alertness and the activity from my gray tree frogs was a really unique experience. Regardless on if it was houseflies or if it was dubia roaches, crickets, whatever the case, Meredith always continues to showcase and highlight her special ability to attack and down whatever prey there is inside the tank. She truly has established herself as the dominant tree frog inside the Gray Army, and she's not afraid to prove it time and time again. She's one of the most aggressive and bold little gray tree frogs. But moving on, we actually have a small clip of the Dumpy family that we can showcase. Here's Max and Spurgeon sitting on this leaf, and it's really impressive because these are the third largest tree frog species in the world, and they're sharing the same leaf. Now I don't know how the leaf didn't fall or the branch didn't break, but it was a really cool thing just sitting there and watching how peaceful these two frogs were. I mean, it does not look comfortable, or maybe it does to them. I have no way of understanding what they're thinking. But hey, just a really cool scene of two white tree frogs sharing the same sleeping spot. The Dumpy family has been very quiet lately, and for good reason. They really don't have a whole lot of problems. Max, the 5-year-old female white tree frog, continues to grace us with her presence. And it's really cool because she understands the idea whenever the camera's out, it's time to feed. So regardless on what time of the day or night it is, when she sees the camera, first she tries to usually lunge at it, and then she settles down realizing, hey, it's feeding time. And she always graces us with some of the greatest shots recently that I've been able to get with this new camera. It's always rewarding to get really, really beautiful clips like this of just showcasing her beautiful face inside her home. Aside from dubia roaches, I also purchased houseflies, and I thought it would be a really awesome time to show how up close and personal I can get with the camera, and also how up close and personal I can get with the frog. Because Max loves to be hand fed. Now don't get me wrong, this is a frog that's at the top of the food chain. She can hunt better than the other two inside her enclosure, but her preference is for me to hand feed her. And I don't blame her. What a smart frog, realizing that she doesn't even have to run around for a meal, it'll just fall out of the sky right in her mouth. Max is always full of energy and feisty, and it's just really cool to just show you guys an up close and personal experience of how she's so readily accepting being hand fed. Jeremiah and Spurgeon were also supposed to be given the opportunity to showcase how I can hand feed them, but I wasn't actually able to record these two getting hand fed because Max got in the way. This stubborn white tree frog wasn't willing to give up any other sorts of her meal. Regardless on who I thought it was time to feed, apparently it was only time to feed Max. As I said, this episode and this part of the story was hopefully going to be meant to show you how I hand feed Spurgeon and Jeremiah, but because Max actually got in the way of the shot, I have to fast forward and we can't actually showcase Spurgeon and Jeremiah feeding, but we might be able to in a special episode of Frog Forests coming up soon. Now, getting back into the story of the baby Copesbury tree frog, this is really one of the nicest looking frogs and most fun to actually handle, because this baby Copesbury tree frog has been with me for so long, actually since it was a baby tadpole, a really small guy hanging out in a pond that just hatched. I managed to rescue this before who knows what happened to the pond. Actually, I don't even have the whole story straight myself, but whether the pond is still there or not, this might be one of the last frogs to come from his home. So I wanted to actually give a really nice update video showcasing some of the things I was doing to get the frog ready to go into its new home. I added some water and wanted to actually soak the frog and hydrate it before it actually entered in, and I added soil. One of the nice things about this baby, it knows how much I feed it, and it also trusts me a great deal. So it's very easy for this baby to come up to the top and for me to handle it. The baby Copesbury tree frog loves to actually be handled, and I really don't do this much, but because it loves to feed in my hand, I can't pass up the opportunity to do that, but also to move it into its new enclosure. I'm very gentle and I know that the frog is fragile, so I try to be diligent and alert as possible. The other awesome thing about this baby is it actually gives me the opportunity to hand feed it, and this frog isn't even 2 years old yet. This baby Copesbury tree frog is hands down one of the most ferocious, but also one of the cutest frogs that I've ever kept. Being such a small frog, being so feisty and aggressive, but it always looks like it's smiling after it eats, is so unique and so funny to watch. I can't help but get lost in trying to feed this baby as many crickets as it'll take. I don't actually know the sex of this baby Copes, but I'm hoping in a year or two's time that it will either begin calling or it will start to show signs that I can sex it. But if you actually were able to sex it, with it only being a little bit over a year old, please put that in the comments, as I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are. We'll continue the story of this baby Copesbury tree frog and we'll update you as time goes by. But now it's time for the feature episode clip, and that is showcasing another part of the Gray Army's life. You get a chance to see everybody in this episode: Meredith, Dante, while they're continuing to hunt the dubia roaches. Not only do we see them, but we also get an opportunity to showcase Dante calling. I just wanted to give another quick update We moved away from the coil bulbs because I was told on one of the forums and also on one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, coil bulbs apparently can harm the eyes of tree frogs. So with hearing that, I made a diligent and a split-second decision to remove all the coil bulbs that were in my possession, and now I use anything but coil bulbs. While that was just a small explanation for something that I thought was necessary to include, I wanted to showcase actually a failed attempt at feeding. As you can see, my hope was to raise houseflies, and once they were old enough and able to fly out and climb around, to feed them to the Grey Army. However, what I underestimated was the intelligence of the flies once the bag was open to climb up and out of the bag. For most flies that didn't happen, and for the flies that did, the great tree frogs that were on the ground were only focused on the flies in the bag. Here you get a chance to see Meredith showing her aggressive behavior once again. Even though she's aggressive and dominant, she still can't pull a fly out of a bag. And then we get a shot at seeing Melania, who's trying to jockey for position on top of the water bin. But even though she's aggressive and she's trying to outdo Meredith and trying to get a meal for herself, she falls to the same situation that Meredith does, which is a plastic barrier. Regardless on their efforts, I knew that I had to do something and I had to act quick because more flies were starting to get out of the bag. So what I decided to do was pull the lid off and open it up to create a hole and move the bag to give the flies another opportunity to climb out. Meredith took advantage of this opportunity in a slow motion attack on one of the flies, and Dante, who had filled himself with the flies climbing around at the top, decided he was going to check out for the day. He made a really awesome leap I caught on slow motion. That's pretty much the end of his part of the episode. And I wanted to make a statement that this is the beginning of a battle that's been brewing for a while between Meredith on the right and Melania on the left. Meredith has continued to dominate and be the alpha gray tree frog, but her status is beginning to become challenged. Melania has been ferocious, and on her way back from a near-death experience with parasitic nematodes, she looks poised to continue to attack the top position to become the leader of the Grey Army once again. Bane really didn't have too much to showcase in this episode. He only had really one good clip I could salvage, just because it was coming out blurry, but here he is catching a housefly. Melania continues to show her impressive coloring, but also her appetite and her voracious personality. While Melania continues to come back from the parasite, it's a really awesome time in the frog forest with so many different frogs being showcased. We have a really special holiday episode on the way, and we also have a really cool surprise video that's going to be coming. So stay tuned on the channel because we have some really exciting and interesting stuff still to come. While everybody here in the frog forest is starting to get better and thrive, we have to remember our good friend Christian, who we lost just recently. So we dedicated this video in loving memory of Christian. Our thoughts and prayers are still with him. And in this togetherness of the frog forest, guys, we just ask that you please like and subscribe and share this for more content. Thank you all.